You ready? All right, welcome everybody. So my name is Kevin Nilson. I'm a technical solution engineer on the Chromecast team for Google. And so what I do is I help all the content partners. So how many of you have a Chromecast device? Awesome, everybody, so everybody's ready to go. So all the content, HBO, Hulu, Netflix, Pandora, NBA, MLB, Showtime, all these companies, I've been to their offices all over, so it's kind of fun. So, kind of trivia question. This is where I was at noon today. Does anybody know where this is? Any guesses? Hong Kong? Close, close. So this is where I was at noon yesterday. So this is Summer Palace in Beijing. So it's been, this was yesterday also. It's kind of fun. And yesterday, kind of fun. And this was Sunday, the Great Wall. So it's been quite a crazy day. I've been up for over 24 hours. At noon, I was in Beijing, and because you cross the time zone, the international time, you actually land before you left. So I was at noon in Beijing and here on stage at 3 o'clock. But Beijing was fun. I was there for about 3 days. Did a couple of events and some presentations and met a lot of great people. So I was super excited to be able to come back and talk to all of you. So not only has it been a crazy day, but it's been a crazy month, been all over. And Tuesday I'll be in New York. And so this is the kind of thing that I do. Visit lots of companies. Don't do too much presentations and public speaking, but it's more of a hobby, not really part of the work I do. Cool. So let's jump into Chromecast. So we all love to sit in front of the TV like couch potatoes, relax, enjoy. But it's also about spending time with others, kind of sitting with your family, enjoying time in your living room with those loved ones that you have, friends, family, others. And right now in the US, we will watch a heck of a lot of TV. Spend a whole lot of time in front of the TV. Here you can see, about 3.5 hours a day people are watching the television. And so, we have this convergence between television and software, and there's this opportunity for us as engineers to kind of jump in as early adopters and be part of that wave. And so today, I'll do sort of a talk that'll give you some of the fundamental knowledge of developing for Chromecast and hopefully get you in a position where you can jump in there really quickly. So what is Chromecast? Everybody said they have one. Little dongle, $35, plug it into your TV. Everybody should be pretty familiar with this. One thing you may not know is we've got Android TVs out there, and all of the Android TVs you can cast to. So any code that you write for Chromecast runs on Android TV, and it also runs on cast speakers. So we have speakers from LG, we have speakers from Sony, a few others, and it'll work for all those devices. So what Chromecast really is, as many of you are aware, it's taken that 17-inch, really immersive experience where we're really in our phones really deeply, and then that lean-back 10-foot experience, and bringing those two worlds together. And what's nice, if you think about a traditional TV setting where you're using a remote control, on Chromecast we're using the phone. And so imagine, if I ran a little competition here and I asked half the room, I gave you terrestrial remote controls and said, go find a piece of content. And I gave the other half your iPhone or your Android, who's going to be faster, right? The people with the mobile phone are going to find it. They're going to have their preferences. They're going to have all those great things, of their phone. The keyboard, the voice recognition, all those things. And so it's really, on Chromecast, we believe the remote control is not the future of the television. We think the smartphone is. And even, TV manufacturers are starting to develop TVs that ship with smartphones or tablets as part of their TV and do not have a remote control. And so it's not just us thinking this direction. A lot of the industry is going that way as well. So Chromecast runs kind of everywhere, depending on your definition of everywhere. And so Android, iOS, and web, in the Chrome browser. And one of the things that's kind of unique about myself is before I joined Google, most of the work that I did was in the web and in Android. And when I joined Google, it's kind of funny, but a majority of the work that I've done has been in iOS. And so it's kind of funny to join Google to become an iOS developer. But I joined a team of people who are really good at Android and really good at web. And so for me, it was a great opportunity. So I do a little bit, almost even match now, but the first probably year I spent at Google was almost entirely concentrated on iOS. So when we went to build Chromecast, we wanted to be familiar. Any of you could step in this car and kind of know how to do it. I wish I had a car this cool. My wife would never allow that. So 3 kids, it's not going to work. Simple, very easy and powerful. And that's really what we were trying to achieve. And so now let me jump into some of the technology around Chromecast. So what Chromecast is a particular piece of hardware. Google Cast is the technology. And so I'll probably talk more about Google Cast than Chromecast. So when we first launched a product, we just called it Chromecast because there was only one piece of hardware and it was easier for people to understand. Now we're sort of transitioning to the proper name, which is Google Cast. A cast sender is either Android, iOS, or the Chrome browser, and then the receiver is the code that runs in the television or speaker. And what's cool is the code in the television is a Chrome browser. It's a real Chrome browser. It's only, about one version behind Chrome. And what's really nice, videos playing a video tag just like you'd expect. Any sort of captions or things like that run in CSS overlays. And so it's super easy. It's a great, for web developers, it's a great, super easy platform. Most of the people who I work with, companies like HBO and Netflix and Hulu, tell me it's kind of unique for them that it's so easy to develop in because you have all your Chrome dev tools. It's very natural. You don't have to learn a specific language like you do for Roku. Easier debugging than Apple TV. So it's a good, easy place to get into with your content. And the last definition there is casting. And what casting is when you're sending something to your television. So you're kind of watching it on your phone, and then you pop it up and cast it over to your television. So how does it work? You guys all have one, so I'll go through this pretty quickly, but I'll highlight a few points you may not know. So you're on your Android phone, you're watching a YouTube video or some other video that's streaming from the cloud to your device. You look up, you see that big television, and you go, wow, I wish I could see it there. You remember, I've got a Chromecast in the television. You look down at your phone, and you see the cast icon, and go ahead and click on that. And when you click on that, your phone connects out to your television and tells it, hey, would you play this YouTube video on the television so I can see it on the big screen rather than on my small 4-inch, 5-inch display? And then what happens is the Chromecast goes out to the cloud, reaches out to YouTube with your credentials, and then YouTube shows up on your TV. And then what happens is the YouTube is streaming directly from the cloud. It's not streaming from your phone, so you're not wearing out your battery. Your battery's not draining, and you're not using up your data plan on your phone. And so it's really the cloud going directly to the TV. Then the phone itself becomes a remote control. And so if you want to change a video, adjust the volume, any of these things, you can do that from your phone, using your phone as a remote. And the last thing that's pretty cool is that you can actually walk out of the room. You can actually leave once you've casted something. So it's pretty common for me as a father. I'll throw something up on the TV for the kids, something I'm not really interested in watching while I need to actually do something. If I need to do some work or some housework, chores at home, I can pop something up, keep the kids happy for a little bit while I do that. And so this is that's how it all kind of works. So now what I want to do is jump into some tips for coding for the television. So many of you haven't done any Chromecast before, and you may never. And so I want to give some tips that would apply to Roku, Apple TV, sort of any of the environments that you might find yourself in. So the first one here is a bit of a quiz for folks. So I wrote this simple, very, very simple web page to be shown as a Chromecast receiver. And all it says is, hello cast developers. And when I put that up on my TV, you can see this is the TV in my cube at work, and you can see that most of it's cut off. Does anyone know why that happens?
Safe area, title safe,
Overscan. So overscan is exactly the answer. So what overscan is it's just a standard where they suggest not putting things near the outside, and then it's up to the TV manufacturer. And so for older TVs that kind of wrap and things, they can choose to display that or not. So some TVs have settings and will let you change it, but the TV that I show here, in the previous slide, that's actually the TV that I have in my cube in its default configuration. And so if you don't pad with margins, you're going to lose a lot. And so you may, if you think back, or maybe you can look tonight when you're watching your 3.5 hours of TV, you can watch and you'll notice how actors' faces, text, phone numbers, whatever they're trying to advertise or show in the contents of the TV, they usually don't put that near the margins. It's usually inset a little bit, and that's because they don't know how it's going to actually be rendered on the television. So the next thing is, when dealing with second screen, what you really have to keep in mind is that when the phone is a remote, when I'm doing interactions, I'm looking at the phone. It's not like a remote control where I'll be looking at a television. And so dialogues, error messages, any sort of user feedback will happen on the phone, not on the television. And so it's a little bit different. A lot of people will do, some sort of something like an alert up on their television, and it's kind of weird where users clicking things and it'll say not found up there, but the user's kind of looking at the phone. And so keep in mind as you're doing second screen things, be it for Chromecast or Apple TV or any of the other environments, that you keep that in mind. The last thing is burn-in, right? We've all seen, when we were much younger at the library or at school, and the Windows 95 or whatever would be burned into the screen. So does anyone know what kind of televisions this is still a major, major problem for today? Which one? Which one? CRT? No. Plasma. Absolutely right. So plasmas burn in just like old school, LCD stuff. And does anyone know how long you have to sit on a particular screen before it starts to do damage to your TV? Any guesses? Any guesses? Anybody think an hour?
5 minutes.
5 minutes? Exactly right, Peter. Yeah, 5 minutes is at least a conservative number that I tell people. So it's between 5 and 10 minutes is usually what people agree on. And so if you're doing something for the television, and imagine someone's watching a movie and they pause it. Well, while it's paused, after 5 minutes, you need to shift things around, or you need to change the screen and do sort of a splash screen. And you may have noticed either your Blu-ray player or DVD player doing something similar. And so people who own plasma screens get really, really angry because they spent so much money on their television and they don't want it to burn in. Cool.
Not only that, your logo in place and hold it there.
Yeah. Logos have to shift around and move. You really have to be super careful. Otherwise, people are going to get angry. And they've spent, tons of money. So now I want to talk about the design checklist. So do we have any Android developers in here? Anyone? A little bit? So I'll mention really briefly, since not many of you are. So in iOS, when you submit an app to the App Store, Apple has this very rigorous process where they reject your app if it doesn't follow their guidelines. At Google, we kind of feel, not kind of, we feel just, that's just as important to us as it is to Apple. And so this is sort of a tip if you're trying to get your app featured. So a lot of times when I'm at a conference like this at lunchtime, people will say, my Android app has more usage, has higher votes, more stars than the other app that's always been featured, and I've never been featured. And the first question I always ask is, what do you think about the UX guideline? And usually it's, I've ignored that. I think I can do something better, or we're reusing our iOS app. And so at Google, we really, apps that we feature follow the Android style guide. And so when you're doing a Chromecast app, we have a huge user experience guide that kind of tells you how to do things. And really the idea there is for it to be very simple and intuitive and straightforward for your users. You don't want your users coming into your app and having to figure out how to do Chromecast. They've already done Chromecast in YouTube and Netflix and all kinds of other places. And even if you're writing a game or something that isn't television content, they understand the model of connecting. And so definitely read this a few times if you're going in there. So here's an example of how the icons look in the different platforms. We have two kind of main modes of connecting. One would be I connect to the Chromecast and then I play. So it's like I get out, I'm not playing any content locally, I connect to my Chromecast, and then I press play on a movie. And the other would be I play first locally, and then I connect to a Chromecast. And about half the people do one way, and the other half do the other. And so we support both. And so as a developer, you just need to keep that in mind that, your users could be doing either direction. So now I want to talk about building a Chrome sender. So it's really, really simple. The Chrome sender is obviously, it's HTML, JavaScript, CSS. Most of the heavy lifting is done by the Chrome extension. So there's a Chrome extension that users have installed, and that does pretty much all the heavy lifting. So the first thing that you'll want to do when the window loads is check to see if Cast is available. And really what this means is, do they have the Chrome extension installed, and is it enabled at the particular moment? The next thing you'll want to do is create a session request. And with the session request, you'll have an API config where you'll define the callbacks there, the listeners, for a session request. So that's the listener. And then finally, you'll call initialize. And the initialize has a on init success to tell you if it was successful. And then the last callback that you're going to be interested in is a receiver listener. And so what this tells you is if a Chromecast is available on your network. And so sometimes people will power their Chromecast into their TV. And so when you're using your app, you're not going to see a cast icon because there's no device on the network. And then if they take their remote and they power on their TV, then it becomes available. And so this is the callback that will get called when that becomes available. So now you've got a cast icon on your site, and when someone clicks on that cast icon, what you're going to want to do is request a session. So you're calling request session. So it's establish kind of a socket connection between the Chrome browser and the receiver. And when you call request session, what happens is, up in the plugin, we pop down a list of all your devices. And so you don't have to do any work to add those devices, the subtitles and things like that. All that's done for you by the Chrome extension. So then the user's going to select one of those, and that's where you can begin. So the next thing that you're going to want to do is play a particular piece of content. And so here we have a domain object called media info, which is really the information about a particular piece of media. And you pass it a URL So that's really the URL to either an HLS stream or an MP4, and then the MIME type, which is the type of data that is, the type of stream. And then a load request is your loading. So think like loading a DVD in a DVD player, a Blu-ray. That's to load it. Cool. So now let's talk about the receiver. So the receiver, again, that's the code that runs in the television. It's a Chrome browser, remember again. You can do HTML5, JavaScript, CSS, and you can use all the latest things there because it's really a Chrome browser. And for playing video, we use EME, the encrypted media extension, and then MSE for media source extensions and the web audio APIs. And what's really cool is all the Chrome remote debugging stuff that you know and love is all available for the receiver. So you can actually use Chrome Dev Tools on your laptop to debug what's in the TV or in your speakers. Cool. So we've got 3 different types of receivers. The first is the simplest. It's a default receiver. So with a default receiver, you don't have to do anything. You really don't do anything. In your sender, in your Chrome desktop app, you can just say, I want to use a default receiver, and it can play media magically, auto-magically for you. You can pause and scrub and all that. It'll just load things and read your media information for thumbnails and things like that. But the problem is it kind of looks like something that Google built. It looks very generic. The next receiver that we have is a styled media receiver. And the styled media receiver is just like the default receiver, except you can define one CSS file where you can style it and theme it and make it look like it's something that you wrote from scratch with your branding. So here's some example of our sample app where we've made the progress bar to be yellow. We've defined a splash screen. You can kind of change the fonts. You can change pretty much every element, but here you can see the progress bar class and the splash class that I've highlighted. And the last one is a custom receiver. So this is where you write 100% of the JavaScript, the CSS, the HTML to build your receiver. And it gives you full flexibility to do whatever you'd like, record metrics, do DRM. There's really no limits because you pretty much can ask yourself, if you can do it in a web page, you can pretty much do it in Chromecast. There's a few limitations, but in general, that's the idea. So people often ask me, well, can I build a game with a cast receiver? Well, of course you can, because just like you can build a game in a Chrome browser, you can build a game in Chromecast. So here's the simplest Hello World cast receiver, and this is what it looks like. So to start with, you include one script, cast receiver JS, and that's all you need to get our library. And then from there, you're going to define one video tag, one media element. Could be, an audio tag or a video tag. And then what you're going to do is create a new media manager and pass it that video element. And the media manager will take care of all the video element, listening to its events and updating states based on commands like play and pause. And then finally, you'll get an instance of the cast receiver manager and call start. And so this simple code is all it takes to write a fully functional cast receiver. There's a whole lot more, advanced callbacks for listening to people joining and leaving, getting callbacks when videos start and end. There's all kinds of callbacks that you can optionally add for metrics and DRM and all kinds of things that you may want to do. But this is the simplest way that you can get started, and this is all that it takes. Because the cast receiver manager and the media manager do all the work for you. So the next thing I want to talk about is messaging in your receiver. So the receiver has the ability to either broadcast to everyone in the room or send something point to point. And so what you want to do is think back and remember that the phone is the remote control, or the browser is the remote control. And so if we're watching, if we're all interacting with Chromecast here, maybe watching a movie together, we could all get out our phone, or they could get on their laptop, and we could all connect. And so you have this sort of one television to many viewers or many senders relationship. And so sometimes you're going to want to broadcast something to everyone, and other times you're going to want to only send it to one person. And so think about the scenario where we were going to do a poker game. So if we wanted to build a poker game with Chromecast, then we could take the TV and make it the face-up cards. And when I wanted to broadcast out so that everyone knows the face-up cards, I'll use the cast message bus. But then if I want to tell you your private hand that you're going to hold in your phone, right, we're going to send that out on a cast channel so that you're the only one who can see that information. And so this is how you'd use this two type of messaging. The senders only have the ability to send to the receiver. And so if a sender needs to broadcast something, he sends it to the receiver, and then the receiver on a cast message bus would broadcast on the sender's behalf. Cool. So summarizing the receiver really quickly, there's one JavaScript file, the cast receiver JS. The main classes are the cast receiver manager. It's a singleton for managing the receiver state. We have a media manager, which has a session that you can load, pause, and play. And then we've got a cast message bus, which is all the communication brokering that's in a broadcast fashion, and then a cast channel, which is more point-to-point. So like I mentioned, it's not only about media, even though I've talked a lot about media, because that's how we launched the product, and that's where most of the initial uptake was. Now we've launched a bunch of games. So this is Driver. It's a really fun game. You should try it if you have a Chromecast. You basically take your phone and you're driving the car or driving the boat. It's really, really fun. And I can say that it's also a single screen experience. So I played a bunch on the airplane coming back from Beijing to keep myself awake. So it's really fun, cool game, driving the boat around. Things like this are possible with Chromecast, so don't think limited to a media experience, because I'm sure most of you probably don't have media content, but you might want to build a poker game, you might want to build any sort of Mario type of thing, or something like Driver, race car apps. It's really great. We got another one called Flip Flap, where you take your phone and you put it up and point the camera at yourself, and then you flap like Flappy Bird, and you fly through the course. It's really, really fun. And another one that's neat is Just Dance Now, where you dance. So it's very similar to Guitar Hero, but you use your phone to do the interactions. And I can tell you that our QA team absolutely hates that app. They're completely worn out, and like, what have you been doing? You're just all sweaty. And they say a lot of four-letter words, but cool. So debugging for the web in Chromecast, like I said, it's really, really easy. So Chrome, obviously, it's all the regular Chrome dev tools. So how many of you are familiar with the debugger command? Yeah, so I love it. I use it more than you can imagine. So for those of you who don't know, debugger is sort of like putting a breakpoint, but you add it in your code, and you can comment out and add them and remove them. But personally, I'm a big fan of debuggers, and then I'll put a little comment after it to tell what scenario I'd be testing when I would use this breakpoint. So I like doing that a lot. And obviously the console log stuff, all that is real simple. Whoops, I pushed twice. So the receiver is really cool, where you also use all the Chrome dev tools, but you're remote debugging. So has anyone in here ever used Chrome dev tools to remotely debug something? Anyone? What'd you use it for? Chromecast. Use it for Chromecast. Oh my goodness. So I'm sure many of you have problems when you deploy to mobile. But there are no dev tools on mobile, and it's very, very difficult. So check out the Chrome remote debugging. You use an ADB bridge, use Android debugger, and you connect it to your phone, and then you can use your desktop Chrome to debug your phone. And so before I joined Google, I ran a startup. We had scrolling performance problems on mobile. They only show up on mobile. Desktop worked great. We were able to put a bunch of logs and breakpoints and figure out what the problem was very easily using that. And so for you web developers, I highly recommend you check it out because it's like an invaluable tool, especially doing any kind of media query or responsive web stuff. You're having trouble to, maybe it works in a browser when you resize, but not on the phone. Check out the Chrome remote debugger. So last little tip here, when you start your receiver manager, there's this optional parameter called inactivity, max inactivity, and it's the inactivity interval. So what happens is the dongle talks to the phone and does sort of a ping pong. It's sort of, the message is actually ping pong between the two, and it's constantly checking, like, is that phone still out there? Is that phone still out there? Is it responding? And when you're in development, you need to crank this number up to something high like 10 minutes like this. And this is especially for iPhone. So does anybody have any guesses why you need to do this for iPhone? What was that? Somebody said? Battery issues? No? So for an iPhone developer, so iPhone is a little bit more single-threaded in nature than Android, because Android runs in services. But what iPhone does, when you pause on a breakpoint, it stops all threads, not just one thread. And so what happens is, your iPhone developer pauses on a breakpoint, and then all of a sudden, all this crazy stuff starts happening in the receiver because it thinks you've disconnected, and it starts doing all these there's all these consequences you weren't expecting for just trying to figure something out on a breakpoint. And so crank that number up, and so it does mean that when you shut down a device or sort of walk off of the network and disconnect in an unusual fashion, it'll take a while for it to come down. So you don't want to do that in production. If you crank up the log level that I show here on the next line, you get a lot of really, really interesting logs that tell you a lot more of the internals that will help you figure out why you're having issues. The next one is window location reload true. So this tells it to reload the receiver without caching. And so sometimes people will have trouble where they're making changes, they're not seeing them. And so this is a really good way to do that. And then you can also, so myself, I actually never do this. I actually take the USB sort of user tip and I plug it into my monitor and I just the big fat end, and I power cycle it because it doesn't do a graceful shutdown and it's faster. So you can do faster development. Since it's only a $35 device, I don't worry about the thousands and thousands of power cycles that I've done. So little tip and trick. And obviously you get the console log and the debugger just like you do everywhere else. So the resources, where can you guys go from here? Developergoogle.com/cast. You can find all the documentation. A lot of great stuff there. There's a link to the style guide, UX guidelines. Post your question on Stack Overflow to Google-cast. And we actually have a handful of engineers who a lot of their job is actually monitoring Stack Overflow and answering questions there. And so at Google, we really embrace Stack Overflow and really want it to be successful and really contribute to that so that the questions we answer there get seen by everyone. And the last thing we have is a Google Plus community. So that's a great place if you want announcements. Like when we do releases, we'll announce them there and tell folks what's coming. So sample apps, we got a lot of great sample apps. They're all on GitHub. The first one is a cast video. That's a UX compliant. It's a very complex app that really meets our UX guidelines. The next one is a hello video. So this is really what's the least amount of code you can write to cast a video. And this will help you with understanding how the life cycle works and what does it take to get started. And then the last one is cast hello text. And that's for the custom messages. It shows how to send and receive custom messages. So how do you get started? Yes, Peter.
What's the Google Chromecast Twitter handle?
Oh, geez. I don't think we're on Twitter. Yeah. I don't think we're on Twitter. But we are very active in the G+ community. So how do you get started? Read the documentation. There's some flows that tell you if you want a custom receiver or if you need a to go, kind of picking how you're going to do things. And then download the sample apps. Get the sample apps running so you make sure that your environment is completely set up. Modify them, and then start casting your content. And with that, happy casting. And thanks, everybody. Yeah.